There are many ways of learning and literally hundreds of strategies that will lead to learning. But as John Hattie says in his book Visible Learning, in teaching everything works, and therefore the question becomes what works best. So over the course of the next 10 or so videos, I'd like to focus on key learning strategies, things that I think work best. And this video is a brief introduction to them. The first thing is that the work needs to be at just the right level of challenge. Too easy, no learning. Too hard, on the other hand, and no learning either, or very little learning, because if work is too hard, what we know is that learners will give up. Second, the work needs to force people to think. This is key because we learn what we think about. Third, we need to link new learning to existing learning, because the brain wants to make sense of the world around it, and it will look to create those links itself. Teachers can smooth that process by ensuring that they create links when they are teaching. Fourth, we learn best by coming at new material in lots of ways, and teachers typically do use many different kinds of activities, all designed to teach the same things, which is exactly the right approach. But I'm not talking here about preferred learning styles. Frankly, in my view, preferred learning styles is nonsense. Fifth, there are some learning styles that I'm particularly excited about, and I'd just like to mention three of them and cover the three of them in the same video. And those are, first, the notion of teaching others. I think teaching other people is an extraordinary tool for learning ourselves. Second, the notion of spacing learning out so that you come back to it, perhaps the next day, perhaps the following week, and perhaps 3 or 4 weeks later, because that's the way that you embed something in long-term memory. And then finally, the notion of pre-tests. And I'm really excited about the use of pre-tests as a learning strategy, and I think that it's a strategy that's hugely underused in this country. The notion of giving someone a test not just at the end of a module as a summative tool, and not just before the end of the module as a way of revising, but actually perhaps 2/3 of the way through a module as a tool to find out what students have learned by that point, and to make sure that we adjust our teaching. So that's pre-tests. And then the last 5 videos in this series I'd like to devote to what I call the 5 strands of an effective whole school teaching and learning policy. And in brief, they are, first of all, strand 1, sharing the journey through the use of learning intentions and success criteria. You wouldn't get on a bus without knowing where it's going, and the same is true for learning. Secondly, finding out what students already know through the use of rich questions, and finding out what they're learning through the use of whole class strategies to find that out, and not just finding out what the keenest students in the class, for example, have learned. Third, the use of feedback. And I feel strongly that in this country we need to wean ourselves off the use of grades, levels, percentages, scores out of 10 and what have you, which make our learners into grade junkies. And we need to get ourselves as teachers and learners into the habit of seeking and using feedback about what they're learning as a way of improving their learning. The fourth strand of a whole school policy would be about learning together. Learning is essentially a social activity right from when we're born, and that's one reason, of course, why going to school is very important. Done well, cooperative learning is a very powerful tool in the hands of teachers and learners. But of course, done badly, it's a shameful waste of time. So we have to do it best. And finally, owning our own learning. Owning our own learning is the holy grail of teaching. And the more we can get learners to take responsibility for their own learning, the more successful they will be. It's not easy, it is hard, but it can be done, and it's worth it.